Today, I wanted to spend some time working on my process for proving things, coming up with a more standard way to go about it that makes it easier to tell what I've proven and what things depend on other things. However, as I was getting ready to do that, I realized that I have a more practical problem that I have to deal with first. Over the last month, I've been gathering a lot of apples, trying to build up a stockpile that I can rely on in case I lose access to the orchard. I currently have just over 800 apples, and have run out of boxes in which to store them. In the past, when this has happened, or when boxes have broken down due to the ravages of time, I've simply constructed more. But while setting out to do that, I've realized that building these boxes actually requires a significant amount of math to figure out. See, some time ago, I forgot all of mathematics, and have been working since then to rebuild my math knowledge from scratch. There's some kind of math that I need to figure out here, and I don't know if I quite have the tools that I need to deal with it yet. That said, I do have something of a starting point. A while back, I came up with the idea of things that are continuous versus things that are discrete. Discrete things, like apples and watering cans, can't be split into smaller versions of themselves. Trying to divide them up just results in making something else. Continuous things, on the other hand, like amounts of time or lumps of clay, can be split apart into multiple smaller of the same thing. Numbers, as I've been using them so far, work very well for counting discrete things, but can't count continuous things without some extra tools. I came up with the idea of measuring continuous things using what I'm calling units. I choose some small amount of that continuous thing, and decide that, for the purposes of the problem at hand, I'm not going to split that unit up any smaller. For example, while I can't count time, I can measure time by using minutes, or days, or hours. I need to be careful to pick the right unit for the job. The bigger the unit I use, the simpler the work of counting them is, but the less precise the answers I can get using it are. I think that measuring is going to be important for the problem that I have today as well. To construct a box, I know that I can attach 5 boards to each other, just like how I can take a box apart by separating those boards. But I'm pretty sure I can't just use any old boards. I need boards that are some particular size and shape, or else they don't fit together properly. Just as I can measure amounts of time using units like minutes or hours, I think I can come up with a unit to measure amounts of space. If I can measure the size of the boards that I used for a box that I've already put together, I should be able to figure out how to make the boards I need to replicate that box. Looking at each of these boards, I can see that of the 5 boards in total that make up one box, 4 of them are the same, the 4 that end up being the sides of the box. The 5th board, the one that ends up being the bottom of the box, is just a little bit smaller than the other 4. Each board has 4 sides to it itself, and has some amount of thickness to it. The first thing I need to do is find out how I'm going to measure length. It feels like if I can tell how long each of the sides are on the boards, I should be able to recreate them. My first instinct is to try and find some small thing, and say that however long that thing is my unit, and measure things that way. But I can tell already that if I use a unit that's small enough to be useful, it's going to be a real pain to try and measure things using it. I have that thing I found earlier, that clock, which I'm using to measure time. I've been looking at how many times the long, spinny things move around to measure how much time is passing. but it does also have these little notches on the outer edge of it. Now that I look at it, it seems like these notches aren't just for decoration. Each time the middle-sized spinny thing goes around 5 times, it looks like the bigger one moves from one notch to the next one. Maybe this is another way that I can use this to measure time. I can keep track of minutes, either by counting how many times the middle spinny thing goes around, or by checking how many times the bigger one goes from one notch to another. Now that I think about it, there's actually something interesting going on here. In 5 minutes, the middle-sized thing spins all the way around 5 times, but the big one just moves from one notch to the next. In a sense, what this clock is doing is measuring time by converting it into distance. Each of these things moves a certain amount of distance in a certain amount of time. For the middle-sized one, it moves an amount of distance equal to all the way around the clock in a minute, while the bigger one moves all the way around the clock in an hour, and moves from one notch to the next in 5 minutes. I'm not sure if this helps me directly with the boards. The distance that the things on the clock are traveling is going around in a circle, and the sides of the boards are all straight lines. But it does give me an idea of what to do. Instead of taking one small thing, using the size of it as a unit, and measuring things by comparing them to that one small thing, I could have a bunch of small things stuck together, like the notches on the clock. I could say that each of these things is, I don't know, an inch, and that if I stack 12 of them together, it's a foot, just like how 12 of the 5-minute notches on the clock add up to an hour. Although, before I go building something like this, I should look around and see if I have something lying around that already serves this purpose. I had that clock lying around after all, so clearly there's something like measuring things that I used to do before I forgot all of math. Ah, and sure enough, here's something that looks like it could do the job. It has a bunch of notches on it, similar to that clock, but these ones are all laid out in a straight line. So I should be able to use this to measure the sides of the boards for the boxes. It has a whole bunch of different markings on it, though. I need to make sure that I don't lose track of the ones that I'm using. It looks like there are 10 of these bigger markings, and then between each of them there are 9 of these smaller ones, and then between those there are 9 more that are even smaller. I could say that the entire thing is one big unit. For some reason, the name meter is coming to mind, and that it's split into 10 smaller ones, 100 even smaller ones, and then 1,000 even smaller ones. I think I'll call them decimeters, centimeters, and millimeters. Oh, but there's another thing over here that looks quite similar. This one has 12 big notches on it, then a slightly smaller one between each of those, with a smaller one between each of those, and then 3 smaller ones between those. I guess this is another tool for measuring length. It doesn't quite match up with the notches on the meter stick, though. 3 of these stacked up wouldn't quite add up to a full meter. And while it's a bit closer, 5 of the big notches doesn't quite match up to 2 of the centimeter notches. Maybe I'll take my earlier idea and say that this is a foot, and that the 12 biggest notches are all inches. I'm not sure why I have 2 different ways to measure like this. I guess they do each have some unique advantages. On this side, it's kind of nice that there are 10 centimeters and a decimeter and so on, But there being 12 inches in a foot does make it easier to divide into smaller pieces. Maybe once I start using them, it'll become easier to understand why I had them both. If I press this up against the boards, I can see that it's just about the same length as the sides of each of the sideboards. So I can say that the 4 sides are each about a meter long. Actually, now that I look at it, all 4 sides aren't quite the same length. It looks like 2 of them are a meter long, and the other 2 are about a centimeter shorter. If I try and measure the thickness of the board, it doesn't really match up well to the foot, but it seems like they're all just about a centimeter thick. I guess for now I'll stick to using the meter stick, and measure distances using meters and centimeters and such. The baseboard, being a little smaller than the sideboards, seems to have sides that are all 98 centimeters in length. I guess this means that to make a box, I would need 4 boards whose sides are alternately a meter and 99 centimeters long, and one which is 98 centimeters long on all 4 sides. Looking around my workshop, I have a bunch of these really long boards, and measuring them, it seems like most of them are a meter across, and some are 98 meters across. I've got a machine that I can use to cut these planks into sections, so making more boxes out of these should be really simple. I guess that makes sense. This is something that I have to do from time to time, so of course I'd have set up my tools to make doing it convenient. It does make me wonder, though. This setup is very good for making copies of the boxes I already have, but what if I wanted to make boxes of a different size? I'll look at this box, for example. Not one of my main storage boxes, just another I have lying around. Measuring this box, each of the sideboards seems to be about 2 decimeters long on all 4 sides, and so does the base. But how does that happen? If I go and take it apart, I can see that the boards are all shaped a bit differently than the boards on the bigger storage boxes are. If I measure this here, it looks like the thickness here is kind of an awkward length. Somewhere around 14 millimeters, but not quite matching up. Maybe it doesn't turn out to be important. I'll see what happens if I just try to copy the other sizes and use 1 centimeter for the thickness. I don't have any boards that are quite as convenient of a size to cut down to make a box like this, so I guess I'll try just cutting them by hand, marking the lengths on the boards to keep track of where I need to cut. Now this is annoying. I've cut all the boards to the same lengths, but they aren't fitting together at all. I think there has to be more going on here. The lengths are all correct, but there's something else to the shape of these boards that affects how well they fit together. Most of what I've done so far has relied on numbers in one way or another, but I think there's something else I need here to figure out what's going on. Maybe the thing to do is to start smaller, try and build something simpler, and work my way up to things like boxes. I'll start working on that next time, but for now, I have a bunch of boxes to build.